Hi, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, which is a subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC, and our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, you know I have phenomenal guests on my show, and I have a phenomenal guest on today. I'm so happy to have been able to read Cecilia Ticci's book, A Gilded Drowning Pool, and I want to tell you about Cecilia before she comes on. Cecilia Ticci is an award-winning author, writer. She's a historian. She was a former university professor at Vanderbilt University, and she is just an amazing writer. She's also former president of the American Studies Association and the winner of the J.B. Hub-Bell Medal for the Lifetime Achievement in American Literature. Cecilia has written 12 books, 12 different type of books, and she has this Gilded series, which I highly recommend for people to read. And I know it's a coincidence, and I don't have a TV, folks, but I know on one of the streaming channels, they have a series. I think it's called The Gilded Age. That has nothing to do with Cecilia's books, but it would probably be great to watch and also read Cecilia Ticci's books about the Gilded Age at that time. And I want to welcome to Chatting with Betsy, Cecilia Ticci. Welcome, Cecilia.
Well, Betsy, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Great. So I didn't have the opportunity to read your other books. This is your fifth in the series, and I just want to tell the audience again, it's called A Gilded Drowning Pool. And one of the things I found really funny in your book, Cecilia, is the recipes for the drinks that Roddy DeVere concocts up. But I always ask the authors and writers as to what motivated you to do a series of novels about this time era. And I love it.
Well, great. I'm glad you do. I mean, in a sense, the Gilded Age, yes, it's on TV now, and it's an increasingly familiar term. And what is it? If we Google Gilded Age, chances are we get a lot of references from our own current years, the 21st century, these last, let's say, 8-10 years. And what does it mean? It means, as it did in the first Gilded Age, lots of technological change. In that earlier era, it was industry. It was the gear wheels going round. Now, digital. But just as back then, a few people made enormous amounts of money. There were some also, and we know this, who fell afoul of the law and of Wall Street and ended up broke and busted and even in jail. But these two periods, first Gilded Age and second, so we're in the second, but as a teacher for so many years, I became interested in the era that Mark Twain dubbed in his novel, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today. If we think of the word gilded, nobody is particularly happy to be given a gilded piece of jewelry because under the shine there's something that's not so valuable. And so in that day, lots of brilliant wealth and riches, gold, jewels, gowns, mansions along Fifth Avenue, country houses, but also people were struggling. And so I thought, suppose, just as in the past, a couple who were sleuths, in the Thin Man series, I'm jumping here to the 1930s, Nick and Nora and their little dog, Asta. And the old movies are shown, Turner Broadcasting, you can pick them up. A couple whose personalities are very different. Suppose the guy, and I'm being very traditional in gender here, but suppose the guy is an old New York heir of the gentlemanly tradition, and he's gone to law school. But what's interesting about him is that in the Gilded Age, in the late 1800s, he discovered a new invention, cocktails, and they were new. The founding editor of Vanity Fair, a man named Francis Crowninshield, celebrated electricity, he said, and the elevator, and the cocktail, and he meant it. Mixed drinks were new. So my character, I thought, here's Roderick Wyndham DeVere. Secretly, he has learned the mysteries of the very finest cocktails, and he's a consultant to railroads and cruise lines and private clubs. But he doesn't want this known because, as a practicing attorney, he is defending taverns and hotel barrooms and restaurants against the temperance crowd who want to shut down all alcoholic beverages for all time. Now, who would he marry? It happens that his family, down at their luck in investments in Wall Street, in stocks that have tanked, they go west, and his father thinks he could recover his fortune in the silver mines. Now it happens that Valentine Mackle's father, Patrick Mackle, an Irish immigrant, has struck it rich in silver. Val grew up in the mining camps in Colorado with her papa. And it happens that in Virginia City, Nevada, where Papa has and his young daughter, and sorry to say, his wife, her mother, deceased. So it's Papa and daughter Val, and here comes Roderick DeVere and his parents, and the two see each other. She sees his deep blue eyes, that little wave of his hair, and at that first meeting in the Silver Dollar Hotel and Saloon in Silver City, Nevada, which is Virginia City, Roddy says, "I'll show you a trick." And he goes to the bar, has a word with the bartender, and the drink is in the very first novel in the series, which is called A Gilded Death. In that novel, there is a drink recipe for a drink called the Blue Blazer. It involves 2 silver mugs, into one of which some hot water, a little sugar, a little lemon juice. In the other one, hot Scotch whiskey. The whiskey is set alight, and it is poured from one mug to the other. And the arc of flame, the blue blaze, the drink is called a Blue Blazer, and it was and is an authentic drink from the Gilded Age. And Betsy, I have asked a few bartenders, have you ever made a Blue Blazer? Occasionally, I hear once, because the drink is too scary, all that pouring of flaming booze. But now I've gone on maybe a bit long, just to say, once these characters came alive for me, and I hope for the reader, and it looks like on Amazon reviews, it has come alive, I thought, why stop with one? Send them from Newport, the first story. Send them to their home in New York for the autumn, for the season. And that's where young women are being strangled in Central Park, and how they must get involved because a family friend's grandson had a piece of jewelry that's found monogrammed by one of the bodies. And so, Betsy, what I have found, because my characters are in the category of amateur sleuths, they're not officially detectives or involved in law enforcement in any official way. What that means is that for the story to be real and credible and gripping, they have to be in some way involved. So the one that you just read, the fifth one in the series, involves a body found in a Hudson Valley property owned by Roddy's parents, and it's a body found on his parents' property. What happened? How could that be? Who could that be? And so what gives the reader a chance in this novel, A Gilded Drowning Pool, it's a chance to visit a country house in the between season in the Hudson Valley. And the Gilded Age partitioned into summer season at Newport or Bar Harbor, Maine, or perhaps in the Hamptons, as today. And then the winter season, as with today, opera, theater, balls. But in spring and autumn, there were a few weeks called the between season. And what one must do. Some people went abroad. Ladies went abroad to the couturier to be fitted for new gowns. Some people went to Scotland to shoot pheasants. Others went to country houses and had house parties where guests came for several days or even several weeks. That's what A Gilded Drowning Pool focuses on. This body that's been found in a nearby pool, water. The Hudson Valley is very rich in water. It pours down from springs into the Hudson River. And so my characters, Roddy and Val, have an opportunity to take a steamboat up the Hudson. And this was until pretty late in the 20th century, a way of sightseeing and excursions. And so I've dialed it back to the spring of 1899. And as you have suggested, I have to do the historical research. What were the steamboat lines? Which ones were fading? If Roddy mixed a special punch that became a premium for one of the steamboats, what punch would that be? And I tell you, the recipe is authentic to the period, because as you are implying, if one undertakes as a writer historical fiction, it better be authentic. The reader needs to be able to count on the facts. Not too many. Don't overwhelm a reader with them, or it's just too much. And don't be too few, so it seems like maybe you don't know enough. But put in like little historical pellets along the way. Give them to your reader. Let me move and say, not pellets. They're like little presents for the reader to bring an era alive for the course of the story, and keep it and keep those little tidbits of history. Keep them present all along. Again, measured, not too few, not too many. So it's a little a little like Goldilocks. Which chair just fits right? And so on I go through the year with different crimes and different themes and different places, because my couple also need to travel. They go up the Hudson River in a Gilded drowning pool, but they've also been to Chicago in another book, and they've been to Palm Beach in their private rail car. So I get them out of the city.
I just found, Cecilia, that when I was reading your book, that I felt that I was actually in the story. You made it come alive. I could just picture the dressing, the formals, what they were wearing, the jewelry, Roddy mixing the cocktails. You just bring it to the reader. Like, you had that gift for the reader to just really, to me anyway.
Thank you so much. Let me just say, Betsy, I have accumulated, in addition to, to the sort of library that of course a professor kind of gathers. It's sort of, I was reminded, books are wood products. You probably have 8 cords of wood on those shelves in here. But I also have among my sources entire books on fashion of the times, men's as well as women's, and of Tiffany glass, so that if I'm ready to put, when it's just the right moment for a home accessory or a dining table, candelabra, it has to be the right one, and I don't go on sentence by sentence until I look it up, see which one I want, and put it in. So I am thrilled to hear you say that you're living in the pages of the story. Thank you.
Yes, and you're welcome. I have to say this. I envy people like you, Cecilia, that, you could just, have characters in your head, and the story. What amazes me, well, there's quite a few things, is how do you come up with the story and the story, the plot, and the interactions of the different characters? It really amazes me, and I want to tell the audience, we as readers, we just take it for granted. We pick up a book, we read it, but when you read the book, and I'm blessed to have an opportunity to talk to the author and writer, but when you see and hear from the author and writer the research that goes into a book, sometimes it takes 5 years to write a book. It makes you appreciate what you're reading. That makes me appreciate what I'm reading all the more. And the writer. So I appreciate you, Cecilia, and what you put in your book.
Once again, Betsy, blessings on me for saying this. That's as it should be. The reader should not be I don't want to say forced, because so many books are optional. People's time is precious. People are busy. A book should invite one. There are 2 ways of thinking about the book that I was presented to me, and let me offer them. One is, as a writer, you're giving a party, and you invite the reader in as a guest, and you introduce your guest reader to others. You make sure your guest is well fed and given the drinks of choice, and has a very rewarding time, introduced all around, so that when the evening concludes, this party, the guest, the reader, has had a well worth it time. Now that's one idea. The other is this. You're a captain of a vessel, and it's going to take a voyage, and a passenger comes up the gangplank onto the vessel, and this is your book, and the vessel goes underway, and it is a voyage of great, heartfelt pleasure. It doesn't mean it's sugary any more than the party was nothing but sugar drinks. There can be challenging guests to meet. There can be a challenging route along this vessel's waterway. Things to think about, things that ordinarily the guest, the passenger, has not necessarily had on her or his mind. But when the vessel docks at the end of the voyage, that passenger should feel this was well worth it. This was well worth it. And that is the idea, I think, that a writer ought to have. Before we came on the air, I was mentioning a book that I regretted was overstuffed. It almost became an encyclopedia, and trying to find my way through the story, and constantly being encumbered by facts that, frankly, should have been in maybe footnotes at the very end. And it wasn't a scholarly book; it was a general reader book. But I felt that this was a writer who needed help that wasn't offered or maybe wasn't accepted. It's very tempting, once you've done so much research, to put it all in, including in historical mystery fiction. You've done all this work. You've read all this about the period. Maybe you should get it in. No, I would say no. Pick and choose. Select. It's a little bit like maybe some jewelry. Not so much that one. Not that necklace too. And so it's a constant test of, is it worth it? Whether it's a scene, even a paragraph, or a chapter. Did it strike the right balance for the reader? Did it give the reader the gifts of challenge, of interest, even of amusement that the reader deserves to have? After all, people spend money for books, and spend time with books, and both count. And so a writer has a real obligation and should be thinking of the readers all along.
That's a great concept. What I find intriguing, to even talk, is how, like, in your book, and you've wrote, this is your 5th series in the Gilded Age. How do you come up with, okay, you had Roddy and you have Val, but the other characters and the dialogue, did you do that before you write your book, or do they come up as you're writing?
Well,
the characters and the dialogue.
Thanks for that question. Let me mention, yes, in dialogue, what I find in dialogue is a help to read aloud a sentence or some spoken passage. I read it aloud, and if it sounds like what I want it to sound like, a conversation, maybe they're, what is their mood? Are they teasing each other? Let me say this, and this was a suggestion to me by a member of a writing group, and our group meets every month or so and helps each other with suggestions. One member said to me, Cecilia, Val and Roddy can argue, dialogue that would be arguments. No, you didn't. I think I did. Well, you hear me saying. But it's important that the reader see that they like each other, that they are well knit together before they have any falling out of disagreements. So it is, in the very, very beginning of the novel we're talking about a gilded drowning pool. That there's a certain tension there. What Val wants to do, she doesn't want to go to this country house, and they've been invited. And Roddy says, but we're invited, and it would be nice. And they're a little back and forth. Now, I read these lines of dialogue I read them aloud, imagining that I am Val and imagining that I am Roddy. Are these the words that the man would say? Are these the words that this woman who was raised in mining camps in the West, that she would say? Let me give you an example of his and hers, very brief, this is short, difference. And this is in the book that's coming out right after the first of the year, and the title of it is Death in a Gilded Frame. Okay, gilded again. Now, both Val and Roddy are talking about a painting. And the painting, it's a real painting called French Artillery in the Snow. And in the painting, and they're looking at it, in the painting, there are Napoleonic soldiers, and there's the cannon, and some of the soldiers are standing there, and they're going to fire the cannon. But others are lying dead in the snow. Artillery in the snow. Now, Val talks about them. I see cannon and soldiers and corpses. And Roddy says, you mean the fallen. Now, a reader will go past those two lines very quickly and probably not stop. But it's Val who's raised in those mining camps, and she's seen a lot. She would just say, lying in the snow are dead soldiers. Roddy, the gentleman, who always has been raised in a much more genteel culture, he calls those same figures the fallen. Now, they then go on. I mean, and I don't make anything of it. I don't call a reader's attention to it. Some readers will see the difference. Others won't. That's fine. Everybody has different tastes. But I pointed out, just as an example of dialogue in which what has to be considered, who's saying it, and why would that person use those words? And that's always for the writer a test. Let me mention another character, if I may, Betsy.
Sure.
You've asked. There is a very good friend of Val's. Her name is Cassandra, Cassie, and she, like Roddy, is a socialite from many years. Her real name, Cassandra Schuyler Fox Forster. Her husband is a scientist who goes on long ocean voyages looking for fossils that are the secret to the origins of Earth. And so he's on the scene sometimes, but not always. Cassie is a very good friend to both Roddy and Val, but especially she's Val's girlfriend. Now, here is what is striking about her, and I thought a long time about this. Cassie, as a little tiny girl, even from infancy, she had a nanny from the islands, Sapphira of the islands, who was a person, presumably non-white. She's from the islands, and she introduced Cassie to a sort of sixth sense, to the visions beyond what is visible to most people. And Cassie grew up with a kind of sixth sense. She has psychic abilities. Her mother, a kind of angry, cold woman, realizing that this nanny was infesting her daughter's mind, sent her away, but it was too late. Now Cassie then has visions along the way, and you saw it in a gilded drowning pool, because Cassie was in the Hudson Valley at a country house, and it didn't go well, and she has a kind of foresight that Val and Roddy are headed for trouble. I would say about psychic powers, I don't have those powers, but I don't disbelieve others who demonstrate those powers. And I sometimes think, how many coincidental times have you been thinking of a friend or a relative who's far away, and at that moment your cell phone goes off and it's that person? Or the opposite happens, and that person says to you, I was just thinking about you. Now, I know that Duke University for a good many years had a research program trying to investigate the paranormal, and I think they closed it down. They weren't able to make the headway they wanted with it. But I do not disbelieve, and so when I brought Cassie into these novels as Val's good friend, and made her a person who, unlike all the others, can see the past and the future in ways that are not accessible to the other characters. I knew what I was doing, and I would say to any writer, don't bring into your fiction a character that you don't believe in. It might be a minor character, only on the scene some of the time, but don't toy with characters that you bring alive in your story, because they all matter. That's what I would say. So Cassie has her visions. Roddy tends to be skeptical of them. He remembers that she was a superstitious child when they were youngsters together in dancing class. Val does not dismiss Cassie's visions. She worries about her friend being kind of overpowered by them sometimes, and it's a point of caring between friends. So again, but just to say, only bring into your books characters that you can believe in and that you can present believably to your reader.
I like the character of Cassie. I really did, and I could actually relate to Val believing her, because I'm not a psychic, but I am an empath, and I do get intuitions, and they've come to me, and it's something that you can't explain. So I was very much enjoyed that character very much, and Val's faith in her, even though Roddy was kind of, as you said, kind of leery of her. And I have to say, I love the print in your book for someone who is visually impaired. The printing size of your book is absolutely very helpful.
I am so happy to hear you say this. I care so much about it. And with the editor and I space between lines and a reasonable print size. So many books. It's a friend of mine wrote it was a scholarly book, and he said they scrimped so much on paper that I felt I had written a pamphlet because this tiny little print, and practically a magnifying glass. So I care a lot about ease of reading. And the light. Who knows whether the light's good or the light's dim, and it's important. So whether a person, of course, on a Kindle you can adjust the print size, and that's not a problem. But if you want to hold it in your hand, it better be handy to your eyes. Yes.
Yes, and I get a lot of books. I get a lot of publicists send me clients, and they put the book, in a PDF. And I unfortunately I don't have a computer, but I can't read a book from a computer or a Kindle or off my phone. I have to have the book with me. I'd like to hold a book, but it's better for my vision to read a book. And Yes, I just love when people do their books in print that is great for not just me, but for others who have vision problems. And I had to thank you, Cecilia, for doing that and writing your books. You were a phenomenal writer and author. And as we wrap up here, I really want to encourage the audience to go on Amazon.com, and the website for Cecilia will be in the blog. But check out all the books, and I really highly recommend reading A Gilded Drowning Pool.
Oh, thank you, Betsy.
You are welcome. It's such a pleasure talking to you. And the readers can order this book on Amazon.com, and you have a website, CC, which is CECEBooks.com, and they can they order from your website, that website, Cecilia?
Yes, they go.
Oh, okay. They could order from there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. And then they could see what other books you have, and what new books will be coming out, like you just mentioned one.
Yes, right. After the first of the year, yes. Death in a Gilded Frame. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what. You are most welcome to come back on my show to talk about that book, and I hope that I will get that to read and be able to chat with you again, because it's just, I think sometimes, Cecilia, this is just my opinion, I think sometimes writing, and I'm not one to critique writers because I can't hardly write a paragraph about something, but I think sometimes that reading is a lost art, but writing, the way you write, to me, is just so, I want to say, authentically from the heart. that you are writing these characters, and I get that. But reading, folks, don't let reading become a lost art. Get books, read. Get a book in your hands if you can. And really appreciate, really appreciate the writer, the author, and what they've gone through to bring you a book. I don't take it for granted anymore. I've talked to so many authors and writers that I really have come to appreciate what you all do and what you all give to the reader. I really do. So thank you.
Hugs
so much.
To you, lady. Hugs to you.
Hugs to you too. Excuse me. Hugs to you too. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I love talking to writers and authors of different books, and I just want to thank you for coming on, chatting with Betsy. And folks, you heard Cecilia Ticci. Cecilia is Celia, and her last name Ticci is Tichi. And, it's holiday season. If you have a reader in your family, friends, buy them a book. And if they like the Gilded Age era, then buy them this book. That's what I recommend. And I want to thank everyone for listening, and I really appreciate it. And I would appreciate it if you would share the show. I have great people coming on, great resources, and I want to help as many people as possible. And if you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, don't know what you're waiting for. It's free to subscribe to on iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, AmazonMusic.com, YouTube. And I want to thank Jeanne White, who's the station manager, Passionate World Talk Radio, who writes the blog, produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Cauldwell, who's CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And you can follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy E. Wurzel, Wurzel, and you could see what I am about, and I post the shows on my Facebook page as well as my LinkedIn page. And if you are looking for a support group, if you are a caregiver, I have the support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, and everyone is welcome. And I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. This may not be out until January, but there's holidays in the next year. So I want to wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday season, a safe one. And as I always say at the end of my show, folks, and I believe it now more than ever, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright. Because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder, brighter world. And that's my philosophy, and I stand by it. Until we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, a subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Bye-bye now.